Okay, so this is just an extra video to help you understand. Okay, well now I understand what the problems are, but how can I fix them? And I apologize if it's very noisy, but our next door neighbors are doing construction and it's absolute torture for me, so I'm sorry if it's noisy. But anyways, the first problem that we have is that you have to actively listen. And this is hard. It's work. I can't tell you how many times my husband starts talking about the car, and I'm just not interested in cars. It's not my thing. And I zone out because I'm not interested. And that's my husband, and I want to listen to him. Of course, I'm not trying to ignore him, but it's natural. So if you take that and then you throw a foreign language into it, it makes it even harder for us. There's a couple things that you can do besides what I mentioned in the infographic. Because I mentioned that you can try to listen for specific information and take notes. And I actually, in my live classes, I have the students always jot down notes about what their partners say. Because when I ask them, before we finish up, I'll ask them, what did you learn about your partner? Not about themselves. And that is a really, really good way to make sure that you're paying attention, because if you can't write it down, you didn't hear it well enough, and it prompts you to ask the person to repeat it or to ask them, I don't know that word, what does that word mean? And it's very, very helpful. And we don't have that option. So my suggestion would be to do kind of an inverted triangle. Try to listen first for the overall idea, because you're not going to understand every single word. It's impossible. And the people that get caught up on the little prepositions and the connecting words, they don't advance because they just end up discouraging themselves, getting frustrated. And you don't want to do that. So you want to listen for the overall idea. Are we talking about school, the house? Is it a family conversation between friends? What is the main situation going on? And then listen again. You don't have to listen just one time. Listen again and try to gather some additional details. So if you know that they're talking about the house, well, are they talking about cleaning the house, fixing the house, buying a house? What's the action that's going on here? What verbs are happening? And then you can listen again. And it's okay if this first main idea listening takes 3 or 4 times. It's okay. There's no limit to how many times you can listen. The third time you want to listen for the extras. So that's your adjectives. These words that are going to give a little bit of decoration, the idioms and the colorful sayings, but aren't necessarily vital to the message that's being sent. Now, like I said, it might not be in one time that you get the main idea. That's fine. What you want to do is make sure that if you're practicing listening, speaking, reading, or writing, it doesn't matter what it is, that you're doing a little better each time. So if I do a listening today and it took me 10 times to get that main idea, next week I'm going to try to get it in 8. I'm not going to go from 10 to 0. That's impossible. And I can tell you, because I see the Flipgrid numbers, and I can tell you that you might not think that people have to listen to your Flipgrids more than once, but they do. Some Flipgrids have thousands of listens. And people don't just listen one time to your videos, they listen over and over and over again to get what you said, even though you only said 3 sentences. So don't think that you're alone. That's my idea for number 1. Okay, for number 2, the 70-30 rule. This rule is going to apply to anything that you're working with. This also could be reading. And this is really tough because this means that you need to know approximately 70, but I would say 60 to 90% of the vocabulary in a reading, a listening, in a conversation. If you're trying to write something, you need to know that much in order to get the main idea. If you know less, and it varies from person to person and situation to situation, because if I'm speaking with you one-on-one and you see gestures and the context, if I'm talking about my daughter, she's crying in the background, it's going to be much easier to guess what I'm saying than if we're on the phone. But typically, if you know less, you lose the entire conversation, you get frustrated. And if you know more, you're not challenging yourself. And that happens more than you would think, actually, that sometimes students get 100% on everything they do. And that's wonderful. But if you're not making a mistake, if you're not learning at least 10% new vocabulary every time you're doing something, I think you're doing yourself a disservice because you're not moving forward like you should. So both ends are not going to be ideal. You want to get 70% about. A very easy way to do this is to take a look at the transcription and to count the words. If there's 100 words in the transcription, or let's even make it shorter, you could say there's 50 words in the transcription. We want to make sure that we know 70%, which would be 35 words. About, remember, it can be 30, it could be 40, depending on what you know and how well you are at guessing context. But if you don't know 35, that doesn't mean that you can't do the listening. That just means that you need to look up a couple words. So if I'm a few below that, or if I try the listening and I'm not there yet, I'm still just not getting it, you want to go back, take a look at the transcript, take a look at the reading, whatever you're working with, and look up 5 to 10 vocabulary words. You don't want to look up every single word if it's a lot of words, because you're not going to retain that information anyway. But try to look up a couple at a time. Go back, listen again, see if you understand more. Remember, we're not shooting for 100%, we're shooting for improvement. And then you can go back and look up a few more. See if it makes a difference. That's going to be my idea for number 2.